Welcome back to Books Like Fun. I'm Bo. I recently read Goodbye Earl. Goodbye Earl was based on a song of the same name by the Chicks. If you have not heard that song before, go listen to it. And this video is going to be a little bit different than previous videos. For this book, I recorded myself after every single chapter. There will be a lot of spoilers in this video. If you don't want to hear spoilers, click the link to the video above for my spoiler-free review. Act 1. My friends are my estate. Forgive me then the avarice to hoard them. Emily Dickinson. So in chapter 1, we learn about a group of friends, Rosemary, Ada, Caroline, and Casey. This chapter is set in 2019. Casey looks like she's the main character right now, and she hasn't been in town in 15 years. So the reason Casey's in Goldie is because her friend Ada's little sister Taylor is getting married. So Casey's friend group is Rosemary, Ada, Caroline, and Casey, and then Taylor is Ada's little sister. Taylor's getting married. I don't know a whole lot about the characters yet, just that they were a group of friends in high school, and Casey hasn't been in town for 15 years. Chapter 2 is set in 2004, and we learn about Casey's home life. Her dad died when she was a baby, and then her mom remarried when she was in middle school to a real jerk. He's a giant a-hole, and he smacks both of them around. And we see her in the kitchen trying to make spaghetti and meatballs for dinner one day, and he comes in and gets mad and dumps the spaghetti and meatballs down the sink. So she goes to her friend Ada's house, and Ada's boyfriend Grayson and his brother Silas come and knock on their window, and they go hang out a little bit by the lake or something. So we're learning a lot about Casey's backstory and home life. We are learning a lot about Casey's friend group. So we're back in 2019 in chapter 3, and Taylor's wedding week is going on. Caroline is married to Trey, and apparently Trey's family owns half the town, but he's embarrassed that Caroline works at a bakery for some reason. He thinks that's beneath them or something, I don't know. And he's kind of a jerk. He got mad at her for working at the bakery. She doesn't want to quit her job, but he doesn't want her to work there anymore. Ada married Grayson, who is Silas's brother. So Ada is married to Grayson, and Rosemary has a girlfriend of 3 years, but she is in Seattle, I think it is, and didn't come to the wedding with Rosemary. Casey is engaged to Devin, and he's in New York, I think, is where Casey went off to. We're learning about some of the girls' backstories and who they ended up with. And I don't think Caroline is super happy in her relationship right now. Chapter 4 is set in 2004. We learn a lot about Caroline in chapter 4. In chapter 3, we saw her arguing with her husband, Trey. And in chapter 4, she's still in high school, and she works at a diner, and she's trying out recipes and stuff. We already know she's a baker in 2019. So we get to see a lot of her trying out new recipes in chapter 4, and she wants to go to culinary school or pastry school when she graduates. And she flirts with a guy named Beau, B-E-A-U, spelled differently than my name. She flirts with a guy named Beau who also works at the diner. He's 22 and she's 17 right now. She wasn't dating him, she was flirting with him, but she seems to like him. She wants Beau to take her to the prom in chapter 4. We also learn a little bit about Rosemary. Her parents are giant hippies. Her mom makes pot brownies and doesn't say anything if the girls eat them. At the end of chapter 4, Caroline is just wishing that Beau was able to take her to the prom. In chapter 5, we learn a lot about Rosemary. Rosemary hears Caroline on the phone, and she goes in, and Caroline's drunk. This is 2019. So they're at the wedding week stuff. and Caroline is drunk and she needs to take a nap. And Rosemary takes a look at her phone and she ends up seeing the texts from Trey. No one else in the group likes Trey, only Caroline, and Rosemary is not happy with the way Trey was talking to her. And then we learn later they're going to Duke's for Taylor's bachelorette party thing going on. Rosemary, not only does she have a girlfriend in Seattle, but she also is in a relationship with a guy in Goldie, Leo. And they know about each other, I guess. So she said they did. She said they know about each other and they're all okay with it. So good for her. Chapter 6 is a lot of prom planning stuff. Rosemary asked Leo to prom. So Rosemary has had a relationship with Leo since high school. I think Ada and Casey are going with Grayson and one of Grayson's friends. Caroline wants to go to prom with Beau, but she doesn't want to ask him because he's 22 years old. And we also learn more about Casey's stepdad, Roy. He's a giant jerk. One time won her a stuffed animal from a fair or something and the dog chewed it up and he got mad at Casey for it. Giant jerk. I'm only a couple pages into chapter 7, but we're learning about Ada and Grayson, and they were dating in high school and they got married, I don't know when, but they have 4 boys, and we're back in 2019 in chapter 7. They seem like they have a really great relationship, and Grayson is taking their 4 boys to his parents' house for the day so Ada can get all her stuff done that she needs to get done for her sister's wedding, and it's just really sweet. And she said something in this chapter. She had girlfriends whose husbands had never changed a diaper or given their children a bath. Grayson had been hands-on with their boys since day one, and that's awesome. Casey and Silas were hanging out at Duke's last night, and it seems like they're getting along great, which some of the friends are happy about, but Ada's not too sure how to feel about it, and she was trying to talk to her husband, Grayson, because Grayson is Silas's brother, and he didn't really know anything about it, and she's like, but he's your brother, like, how do you not know what's going on with him? What do boys talk about? Boys are so stupid! Ada went to Caroline's house as part of whatever Ada needed to do for this wedding week thing, and Caroline showed her a pearl necklace that Trey got her. You know Trey is just giving her these gifts because he was such a jerk and they had a fight and whatever, and he's trying to make up for it. I think Trey's abusive, and I mean, this book is called Goodbye Earl, so I wonder who is gonna get Goodbye Earled. Maybe it's Trey, or maybe it's Roy. Maybe they Goodbye Earl Roy in 2004. But maybe it's Trey. No. I just finished chapter 7. We were learning about Ada and how Ada has a great relationship with her husband. It seems like he does stuff with the kids and everything. But Ada's mom seems like she's kind of a drunk and addicted to pain pills, so she's not doing so well, and Ada's the only one who takes care of her, or the only one who's willing to take care of her, so she has to deal with all that stuff. Her brothers don't help, her friends don't know what's going on with her mom, her sister hasn't really noticed. Her sister's the one who's getting married, Taylor. Ada is the older sister, Taylor's the younger sister. Taylor's not helping, so I kind of feel bad for Ada right now. I'm halfway through chapter 8, but they're at prom right now. This going back and forth stuff is a little confusing sometimes, but it's 2004 and they're at prom, and this is where Caroline kind of not meets, because they know Trey, but Trey asks her to dance. Caroline's date disappears during prom and she wants to dance, but he's gone, so Trey comes over and asks her to dance. So she danced with Trey for some reason, and then at after prom at the lake house, it's Grayson and Silas's lake house, everybody talks about her dancing with Trey, and they all agree that Trey is a giant dick, so I don't know why she ends up marrying him later, so I guess we'll figure that out hopefully soon. A lot of stuff happens in chapter 9. Casey goes back to her old house that she used to live in when she was in high school, and she remembers lots of bad memories because her stepdad was a giant jerk. She starts crying at that house. She calls it the farmhouse. And then she sees Silas because someone called because they saw a car they didn't recognize. So he came and she saw him, and she's been seeing Silas a lot. And then the chapter jumps to the wedding, which I think is that same day that she went to the farmhouse, or maybe the next day. So Taylor has her wedding and they dance and all that stuff, and Casey dances with Silas as well. And then later she tells her boyfriend in New York about, or her fiance in New York, about Silas. And he's not mad, and he just wants her to come home and wonders why she didn't tell him about Silas earlier. And I think it's because she still has feelings for Silas. But Chapter 10 is a short chapter, but we learn that Casey got some kind of internship. Casey got a market analyst research internship in New York City, so she was filling out all the paperwork for all of that stuff, and she was super excited about it. So that's what we learned in chapter 10. I wonder why, though, she doesn't end up with Silas, because they're still together and everything at this point in 2004. So I don't know what happens after. In chapter 11, we learn that Caroline has only been married to Trey for 6 months. And it's been like 15 years since they graduated. So why is she with Trey? I don't understand it yet. And he's a giant jerk. Chapter 12 is super short, but we learn that Caroline is planning on going to pastry school after they graduate. But we knew that already because she works for the bakery in 2019. But we also learn that Caroline is in love with Bo, from that guy from the diner that's 22 years old. And she said she's in love with him. So how does she end up with Trey? Seriously. Chapter 13 was also a very short chapter, and chapter 13 is in 2019, and we get Rosemary's perspective. They're still at Taylor's wedding, and Rosemary had to listen to the voicemails from her girlfriend, Esme. Esme hasn't come down for the wedding. I thought she was going to earlier, but she didn't. And she leaves a voicemail saying that it's important for them to be together right now for some reason. I don't know why. I don't know what's going on in Rosemary's relationship, because she's the one that has a relationship with both Esme and Leo. And then Rosemary sees Caroline leaving, and Caroline's leaving with her husband Trey, and Rosemary sees something's wrong, and Caroline was crying, and she does not like Trey and knows that something's going on with them and wants Caroline to stay, but can't figure out how to keep her from leaving with him. I hope something bad doesn't happen when Caroline goes home with him. Chapter 14 is set in 2004, and we're still with Rosemary's perspective. And I feel like each chapter I'm getting little clues about stuff about the girls' lives, and all of the things that happened in 2004 somehow relate to things that happened in 2019, but I'm not 100% sure where all this information is going. So in this chapter, we see Rosemary and Sparrow, and they're hanging out. Sparrow is someone that they go to school with, but Sparrow doesn't want anyone to know that she hangs out with Rosemary because she doesn't want anyone to think she's a lesbian or something. And then the girls promise to keep in touch with each other. And we know they kind of do because they've come to New York to talk to, or to see Casey and to visit Casey and stuff. But Casey hasn't been back to Goldie until Taylor's wedding. So I don't know what else they've done to try and keep in touch. Chapter 15 is set in 2019. And I just realized that we get a 2019 chapter with a character's name on it, and then the next chapter is 2004, and it's that same character's perspective. So in this chapter, we have Ada's perspective, and Ada is one of the girls whose families are pretty well off. Ada's mom gets drunk all the time. She drinks too much wine, and she got drunk at Taylor's wedding, and locked herself in the bathroom, and Ada's trying to get her out. So chapter 16 ends Act 1, and it seems like Act 1 is all about Casey and her friends, and we learn about where they are now and where they were in high school. And I guess we'll learn how they get from high school to where they are now. So Casey was dating Silas in high school, and in the present, she's engaged to Devin. Rosemarie in high school was dating Sparrow and Leo, but in the present, she's dating Leo and Esme. Ada and Grayson were dating in high school, and they get married. Caroline likes Bo, but ends up marrying Trey for some reason. Act 2. There is nothing I would not do for those who are really my friends. I have no notion of loving people by halves. It is not my nature. Jane Austen. So chapter 17 is about Casey, and she's leaving Goldie the next morning. So she goes to Caroline's house to bring coffee and muffins and stuff, and she sees and hears Caroline and Trey arguing, and Trey is being abusive to Caroline. He throws her up against the wall and stuff. And Casey has experience with this kind of behavior because her stepdad was like that with her mom. So instead of knocking on the door and disturbing them more, she didn't want to make Trey more mad. She calls Caroline to distract them and then tells her that she'll see her later or something. I don't know if I would have been able to walk away from that. I feel like I probably would have knocked on the door and done something. I don't know. But she ends up driving to the police station to talk to Silas, but she doesn't tell Silas what happened with Caroline, which kind of bugs me because he's a cop. She meets up with the other girls later on, and she tells them what she saw happen to Caroline, and they all agree that they have to do something, so they confront Caroline, but of course she denies it. Chapter 18 is obviously drawing a parallel between the past and the present day. In chapter 18, it's 2004, and we learn more about how abusive Roy is to Casey and her mom. Casey and the rest of her friends have a sleepover, and Casey talks to them about how abusive Roy is, and they listen to the song Goodbye Earl and start talking about how better things would be if they Goodbye Earl'd Roy. They all kind of got on board with that. So that's interesting, and I think maybe the next conversation they have in the present in 2019 might be to Goodbye Earl Trey, so we'll see. Chapter 19 is in 2019, and this is Caroline's chapter. And the girls are rallying around Caroline and telling her that she doesn't have to put up with Trey's abuse anymore. And Ada calls her lawyer to find a good divorce attorney for Caroline. And Casey calls Silas to find out how they can get a restraining order. And they all just do what they need to do to keep her safe. And then the next day, Caroline goes to her house to start packing her stuff, but Trey comes over. We learn that Caroline dated a whole bunch of losers after high school, and she couldn't find a good relationship. And then Trey kind of swept her off her feet and was love bombing her and stuff. And then they got engaged and got married and had a huge wedding and a huge honeymoon and stuff. And that's when he started being abusive. And they've only been married for 6 months right now. So then Caroline goes to her house to start packing up her stuff. Trey has cameras all over the house, so he sees her packing or something, and he comes home and she's not expecting him, and he attacks her. And he attacks her horribly and ends up throwing her out the window, because it says glass broke and wrapped around her. She felt the heat of the sun as she slammed back onto the driveway. So I think he threw her out the window. The girls offered to go with Caroline to help her get her stuff, or they volunteered Silas and Grayson to go with her to get her stuff, and she told them no. She said she could do it herself because she knew Trey wasn't going to be there, but he showed up anyway. They should never have let her go by herself. Chapter 20, we jump back to 2004, and it's graduation day, and the girls had planned on Roy. Ada made rat poison black-eyed peas, and Casey put it in the fridge for Roy to find. They weren't worried about Casey's mom eating them because Casey's mom hated black-eyed peas and onions and anything spicy. So it was black-eyed peas with onions and jalapenos. So she didn't think her mom would touch any of it. I don't think I would have taken that chance, but that was their plan. Graduation went fine. Casey did her valedictorian speech, and then Rosemary's car wouldn't start because she left the lights on, so they had to walk to Casey's house, and the chapter ends before they get there, so I don't know if Roy ate any of the black-eyed peas yet. Chapter 21 is in 2019, and we're back to find out what happened to Caroline. She's in a coma, and not only is she in a coma, but they also found out that she's pregnant, and all of her friends are upset that they didn't do something sooner. It's not their fault. It's Trey's fault. Silas happened to be driving by Caroline's house after she fell out the window, and a neighbor waved him down, and he arrested Trey, but he didn't think that they could hold him for very long because Trey's family has a lot of money, and their lawyers were already there, and his parents were throwing a fit. But police can hold you without charging you for 48 hours. So that's what they should do. They should not let him out any sooner than that. And then they should charge him. And of course, Trey says everything was an accident and that Caroline is just clumsy and he tried to save her from falling. And he said that he was horrified that anyone would think that he would ever hurt his wife on purpose. So of course he's trying to spin it. His family has tons of money. They own half the town. So of course he's going to try and get out of it. Chapter 22 is back in 2004 and they're at their graduation party now. And they are kind of waiting for Roy to be able to eat the black-eyed peas. This is their alibi, I guess. But they tried to call Casey's mom and she wasn't answering the phone, and they were all freaking out because they were worried that Casey's mom ate the black-eyed peas. Finally, she answered. She didn't eat any. Casey's mom was at the store doing inventory or something. But they don't know if Roy is even going to eat the black-eyed peas because Casey's mom said that Roy had to go out of town or something. So they're going to wait about an hour and then go to the house to see what's up. Chapter 23 is set in 2019, and this is Ada's chapter. We learn a little bit more about Ada and her marriage with Grayson. They have a pretty solid, good, healthy relationship. He helps with the kids and they support each other, and it's such a big difference between Ada and Grayson's relationship and Caroline and Trey's relationship. And then Ada goes to the hospital to sit with Caroline. Again, they bring flowers, sunflowers, because she loves sunflowers, and she sits with her, and Caroline wakes up and she tells Ada, Trey, he told me he'd kill me. He promised he'd kill me and find another wife who wasn't useless. So Caroline is telling everybody that Trey's the one who did that to her. So hopefully they will not let him out of jail. Chapter 24 is a short one. They're still at the graduation party, but Casey had gone on a ride with Silas and she was supposed to be back in an hour, but it has already been 2 hours. And I think after she got back, they were going to go to the farmhouse, to Casey's house, to check to see if Roy ate any of the black-eyed peas, but Casey's been gone for almost 2 hours now and they don't know where she is. Chapter 25 is Casey's chapter. This is a very, very short chapter, and after they visit Caroline in the hospital, they go out to Ada's minivan to talk, and Casey is saying that they should Goodbye Earl Trey to protect Caroline. There's a line in here that Casey is remembering something in the past, and it says she saw her mom's before face clearly in her mind, the after too. So I don't know what Casey's remembering right now, but I have a feeling that the next chapter is going to tell us. At the end of this chapter, Casey decides to tell her friends something she's been keeping from them for the last 15 years. And I think it probably has something to do with Roy. Chapter 26, 2004. Casey and Silas had gone on during the graduation party to be together. They ended up falling asleep, and when she woke up, there was a voicemail from her mom, and her mom used their code word that they had, which was moon shadow, and they had a code word for if one of them ever needed help to get out of a situation or out of a conversation or whatever. That was their code word, like, help me. And she used the code word in her voicemail. So Casey knew that something was wrong, so she had Silas take her back to her house, and she found her mom on the kitchen floor, bloody, and Roy was standing over her, and Roy had killed her. And then Roy attacked Casey too, and told her that if she told anybody what happened, he would kill her too. She passed out. She probably had a concussion, and when she woke up, Roy was passed out, and her mom was still on the floor of the kitchen. And Casey changed clothes, grabbed some stuff, grabbed the money that she had saved, and took off to Caroline's house, but didn't tell Caroline what happened to her mom. I don't know why people do this. Why don't people just tell the truth? If she had called the police, they probably would have arrested Roy. But instead, Roy threw her mom's body in the river, which wasn't found for 3 more days, and everybody thought that Casey's mom died accidentally, which doesn't make any sense because she was beaten up. But it was ruled an accidental death, and Roy didn't go to jail. And then Casey left town and went to New York City for her internship and left her friends notes and stuff and didn't tell anybody what Roy had done. Chapter 27 is set in 2019. This is Caroline's chapter. We see her in the hospital, and she's talking to her grandmother, Miss Mimi, and they're talking about how she doesn't want Trey to know that she's pregnant because she's afraid that he'll kill her. He probably would if he got the chance, and they're going to do their best to make sure he doesn't know about the baby for as long as they can. And she's pretty banged up. Her shoulder's broken. She's going to have surgery on that soon. She was only in a coma for about a day, but she's lucky to be alive. Chapter 28 is set in 2004, and it's right after Casey leaves town, and she leaves all of her friends each a letter telling her that she'll call them when she gets settled and everything. And then they talk about Casey's mom dying, and they don't believe the story that everyone said, that she was on a boat and fell in the water and drowned. They think something else happened to her. We know what happened to her because we saw it earlier in the book, that Roy is the one who beat her. And then we see Caroline hanging out with Bo at the diner, and Bo grabs an envelope to give her. In the envelope is a check for the exact amount of money she needs to go to pastry school, and he doesn't tell her who it's from. I think it might be from him. I don't know if he has the ability to save that much money or not, but it's either from him or from the woman who owns the diner. That's what I think. Chapter 29 is Rosemary's chapter, and it's set in 2019. Rosemary and the girls were talking to Casey about her mom and what happened back then. None of them ever believed that Casey's mom died in a boating accident. So the girls started planning what they were going to do to Trey, kind of like how they were planning when they were teenagers what they were going to do to Roy. But their plan for Roy didn't work out. Roy left town after Casey's mom died, and he only died about a year ago. He had liver cancer, I think. He left the house to Casey, and the reason she came back for the wedding was so she could deal with the house and stuff. So the girls make their plan for what they're gonna do to Trey, to Goodbye Earl him. And then the chapter jumps to Rosemary, and she's with Leo, her boyfriend, and we learn that Rosemary has cancer, and it came back, and she's going through chemotherapy, and she doesn't have a whole lot of time left. So in chapter 30, we learn that Rosemary is talking to Sparrow, who is someone that she's been kind of dating in high school. She's dating both Leo and Sparrow in high school. And Sparrow doesn't want to continue seeing Rosemary. She tells her that she's not gay and she doesn't want to do whatever it is that they have been doing. And she kind of breaks Rosemary's heart. I feel really bad for Rosemary in this chapter. But she's also dating Leo, and they love each other, and they're kind of like best friends, soulmate kind of things or whatever. I think he will always love her. But we also find out that Rosemary's aunt has cancer, and her cancer came back. So Rosemary has a family history of cancer. And we just found out in the previous chapter that Rosemary has cancer. So I feel really bad for Rosemary in this chapter. Chapter 31 is set in 2019, and this is Ada's chapter. And Ada is making the lasagna with the mushrooms and the pie and stuff that they plan on giving to Trey to Goodbye Earl him. All the girls are feeling good about their plan, and then they go to the hospital to visit Caroline, and Bo shows up at the hospital, the guy who worked at the diner when they were in high school, the one that Caroline liked, but he was too old for her. He came to visit, and I think he lives in Nevada now. And Trey also came to the hospital because they let him out of jail for some reason, because these cops are morons. And of course he went to the hospital to see Caroline, and she didn't want to see him because she's scared of him because of what happened. But Bo was ready to fight Trey when he saw him. Chapter 32 is set in 2004, and we get to see Casey's letter to Ada and how sorry she is for leaving without saying goodbye. And Ada talks to Silas, and he's not doing too well after Casey left. He doesn't take their breakup very well at all. And Rosemary is gone for the summer because she's on a mission trip, so Ada and Caroline spend a lot of time together that summer. Ada is going to throw Caroline an 18th birthday party and invite Bo. We find out in this chapter that the reason Ada's mom is hooked on pain pills is because she got too drunk and fell down their front steps and hurt her back. And then she had to take pain pills for that, and apparently she got addicted to them. Chapter 33 is set in 2019, and this is Casey's chapter, and this is the chapter where Trey comes over to Casey's house for dinner. She said she wants to get to know him and hear his side of the story and stuff, but really this is the chapter where they Goodbye Earl him, and they made the lasagna with the mushroom, and she lured him out to the dock. Ada ended up hitting him over the head with a rock, and he went into the water. And this chapter wasn't as dramatic as I thought it was gonna be, so I'm wondering if Trey's really gone for good, if they really Goodbye Earled him, or if he's gonna like wash ashore and not be Goodbye Earled. So we'll see what happens, I guess. There's just so much more left of this book that it doesn't seem like it's over yet. Chapter 34 is a short chapter. We get a lot of emails back and forth between the girls. Casey is at her internship, and Rosemary is in Costa Rica. And then we get from Casey about how she, every night before bed, she thinks that if they Goodbye Earled Roy first, he couldn't have hurt her mom, couldn't have killed her mom. She said if she was ever in a position like that again, she'd do something about it instead of waiting. So this shows why they really wanted to Goodbye Earl Trey in 2019. Chapter 35 is in 2019, and Caroline's in the hospital, and all the girls come to the hospital room to see Caroline, and for some reason that I don't understand, they tell Caroline that they killed Trey. I don't know why. Why would they tell her that? She's on medication. She just had surgery on her shoulder. Like, she doesn't need to know that. They could have just hid it from her so she could actually be surprised and not seem suspicious to the cops or whatever. Why would they tell her? They should have waited until later to tell her. I don't get it. I hope that doesn't mess up their plan or anything. After the girls left and told Caroline that they killed Trey, Casey suggested that Caroline tell everybody that the baby is Beau's. So when Beau comes to visit her, she asks him if he minds if she tells people that the baby is his, because she told him that that's part of her plan to leave Trey. This is why they shouldn't have told her that Trey was dead. Chapter 36 is set in 2004, and it's Caroline's birthday party. She's turning 18, and she hopes that Beau kisses her after she turns 18. He does, and she emails all her friends to tell them about it. And then the last page of that chapter, we find out why Caroline and Beau don't go out after this. He has to move to Carson City, Nevada to help his dad take care of his grandmother. And they say that they'll write and talk and he'll come back to Goldie, but I don't think he does. Chapter 37 is set in 2019, and this is Rosemary's chapter, and they are talking about being questioned by the police. So everyone is going into the police station to answer some questions because Trey's mom insisted that the cops talk to everybody. So they're all going in there and giving a statement. Beau is also in there answering questions because when Beau first came into town, he had an argument with Trey in the parking lot of the hospital and was aggressive with him. So Beau might be a suspect. Unfortunately, Beau has nothing to do with this. Chapter 38. This is the first chapter that's not set in either 2004 or 2019. This chapter is set in 2006. So we're seeing a little bit later after they've graduated. So a couple years after they've graduated. And Rosemary is studying abroad. Casey's at her internship and Caroline's finishing pastry school. So chapter 39 is set in 2019. And more people are going to talk to the cops to get questioned. And Grayson tells Ada that it's the Foxberrys who have been funneling drugs into Goldie. And they've been doing it for years. And like even Casey's stepdad, Roy, was involved in it way back when. So hopefully the cops end up thinking that that has something to do with Trey's death and then nobody's charged. But then, for some reason, Ada tells Grayson that they're the ones who killed Trey. What is wrong with these girls? Chapter 40 is also set in 2006, and it's mostly emails back and forth between the girls because Caroline and Ada had planned on having a business together, but they can't right now. Ada's going through some stuff. In the emails, she tells them that she had an abortion last week, and this is 2006, so they're all about 20 years old. So she's not ready for kids yet. Through the emails, they all make up, and they're fine. So that was the end of Act 2. So Act 2 was when all the good stuff happened, all the Goodbye Earl and stuff happened, and we learned what happened with Casey's mom and Roy and all that. So now we're on to Act 3. Act 3. But if the while I think on thee, dear friend, all losses are restored and sorrows end. William Shakespeare. Chapter 41 is in 2019, and it's all interrogation transcripts. Not really interrogation, because they're not being interrogated. But Cressida Bell, Leo's mom, goes to the police station to make a statement, and she wants to tell them about how she doesn't think the Foxberry family is a good family. And she said, all I'm saying is that God has his own way of making things right, even if we don't like how he does it. So, I love her. And then we have a transcript from Naomi Brooks, because she wanted to go tell the cops about what happened to her in college, because Trey had assaulted her in college, but she never pressed charges, and Trey's parents paid her off. And then we get a statement from Sparrow, and she corroborates Naomi's statement about how Trey assaulted Naomi, and she says there's a lot of people who would have wanted Trey gone. So Chapter 42 is set in 2019, and Casey's at the farmhouse and Silas comes over, and she ends up telling Silas everything that happened, and he's gonna cover for her and not tell anybody and make sure nobody looks any closer at her or the farmhouse so she doesn't get caught. And then they kind of start kissing and stuff, but she kicks him out. She stops it and kicks him out. And then her fiance from New York shows up at the house after Silas leaves. So I wonder what she's gonna tell him. His name's Devin. So I wonder what she's gonna tell Devin. Chapter 43 is set in 2016, so we get to find out how Casey met Devin. They met on a blind date. His sister set them up. But the same day they had their first date, Rosemarie called Casey and told her that she had breast cancer. And she talked to Devin about it, and he comforted her and everything. So I wonder if that's why they ended up staying together, is because they had like that bond of him comforting her during that time or something. I don't know. Chapter 44 is 2019, and it's also a bunch of statements. So the first one is Joanna Costello, which is Grayson and Silas's mom, and she talks about how she went to school with Trey's dad, and he threatened a previous girlfriend when he was in high school. So I guess being an abusive jerk runs in the family. And she said something interesting. So whether Trey drowned on his own or whether someone wanted him dead, the Foxberrys have pissed off a lot of people in this town, and I wouldn't mind seeing them run out of it, to be quite honest. Love that. The next statement in this chapter is Claire Miller, and she dated Trey in high school, and she also kept seeing him even when he was married to Caroline. So Trey cheated on Caroline with Claire Miller and got her pregnant, and she had to get an abortion. And he slapped her around in high school too. And the last statement in this chapter is Lilani Kingston, and that's Rosemarie's mom, and Rosemarie's parents are giant hippies. So she tells the cops that Trey Foxberry's dad threatened her husband because back in the day, because they're giant hippies, sold weed to the other hippies and stuff, and the Foxberrys didn't want them selling weed in their territory. So Trey's dad threatened them. It just seems like everybody hated that family. So she tells the cops that anybody could have killed him. But everybody keeps asking the cops if it's a murder investigation, and the cops keep saying it's just a death investigation right now. Chapter 45 is Caroline's chapter, and she just got out of the hospital, and she's going back to her grandmother's house because she's not going back to the big house that she shared with Trey. She said she never wants to set foot in that house again. Caroline mentioned something about Paula, who's Trey's mom, came to the hospital, and she was saying all these mean things to Caroline, and I don't understand why Caroline put up with it. I would have had the nurses remove her from my room. You don't have to let visitors in. You can have the nurses remove them. And then when they were at Grandma Mimi's house, Casey came over and told Caroline about Rosemarie's cancer being back, and she's in the hospital for exhaustion and dehydration, so they're gonna go see Rosemarie in the hospital now. Oh, and the Foxberrys got an independent autopsy done, and they said that the crack in his skull was done deliberately. I don't know how you can tell that a crack in the skull is done deliberately. I mean, blunt force trauma can happen from a fall too, so I don't know, but I mean, it's a book. So now it's officially a murder investigation. Chapter 46 is a short chapter. It's set in 2016, so just a couple years before all of the Goodbye Earl happened. Bo comes back into town from Nevada to see Caroline. Caroline's dating some guy named Samuel. Bo had just gotten divorced, so the timing was never right for them. They kept missing each other. Someone had a girlfriend or a boyfriend or whatever, or marriage or something. But they promised they'll always be friends. I wonder how things would have been different if she would have just broken up with Samuel and gone with Bo. Chapter 47 is set in 2019, and it's more police statements. So this is from Cherry Nichols. She works at the funeral home, or owns the funeral home, and she wants to talk about Trey Foxberry. And apparently when Trey was a teenager, him and some friends would knock over the headstones in the cemetery, and she said he's the only one that never apologized to her family. So she said, if somebody killed him for what he did to Caroline, it wouldn't surprise me. No one has anything good to say about that family. Then we get a statement from Holly Plume, so that's Ada's mom, and she doesn't have anything nice to say about the Foxberrys either. Apparently she dated Trey's dad in high school, and he is not a nice guy. We heard about how he was earlier. And she told the sheriff that she thinks it would be better if they just let the whole investigation go and not try and find out who killed him, and that maybe the Foxberrys would then leave town and take all their BS with them, and it would be better for everybody if they just left. But of course the sheriff is like, it's a murder investigation, we have to investigate, and of course they do, but it's a book. Thanks. Then we get a statement from Dahlia and Verity Bell. Those are Leo's sisters. And they said when they were little, when they were 7 and 9 years old, Trey was 14, and he said some really gross things to them, being pervert. And they basically said the same thing that their mom said. No matter how he died, it seems like God would only let him act that way for so long. Everybody thinks that what happened to Trey, he deserved. And the sheriff is starting to agree with them. Chapter 48 is all about Rosemary, and we learn more about her cancer, and she doesn't want to take the medicine that her doctor prescribed. She just wants to die in peace. And Esme and Leo finally got to meet each other, and they love each other, which is making Rosemary very happy, because they can hopefully stay connected after she dies. So that it was kind of a sad chapter. But she said that if anyone ever suspects her friends, that Leo can tell them that Rosemary killed Trey by herself, so no one else gets in trouble because she's dying anyway. Chapter 49 is set in 2017, and it's a short one. It's a couple of emails between the girls. Rosemary is telling them about Esme and Leo, and how she told Esme that she still loves Leo and that she'll always love Leo and stuff. Emails are weird in books. And then another email from Caroline to the girl talking about Samuel, who was her boyfriend in 2017, and he got a job offer in Amsterdam, and she told him to take it. And then she said, at the end of the email, said that Trey came in the bakery. She thought he was cute or whatever, so that's probably when she starts dating him or something. Chapter 50 is set in 2019, and it's some more statements. So our first statement in this chapter is from Miss Myrtle from the diner, and she just wants to agree with everybody else who's made statements about how horrible the Foxberry family is. The next statement is from Miss Mimi. She tells the police about how her dad was abusive, and her mom tried to tell the cops back then about her dad, but the police chief was Trey's great uncle back then, and they didn't help her. Instead, they told her dad what her mom had said, and then he beat up her mom. I don't know what's wrong with the horrible, horrible family. And then Miss Mimi tells the police that the girls were at her house whatever night Trey went missing. The next statement is from Miss Nancy, and she lives across the way from Casey's farmhouse. And she told the police that she saw Trey's car in the driveway and saw him wandering out by the water and by the dock. And she got out her binoculars and she saw him fall in all by himself. So I don't know if she saw what happened, because they call her Nosy Nancy. So I don't know if she actually saw what happened and knows what happened and is lying for them, or if she's just making it all up because she just wants nobody to get in trouble for it, no matter who killed him. And at the end of this chapter, we get some additional notes from the police, and they determined the death was an accident and no further investigation needs to be made. Chapter 51 is Ada's chapter, and they're thinking that Nosy Nancy probably saw them do it, but all the other women in town are coming in and talking to the police about Trey and Trey's family, so they really don't think they have a case against anybody, really, but they haven't heard whether it's officially closed or not. And then they're all sitting around talking. Apparently all the guys know, so Grayson, Silas, Yo, and Bo know what happened too, so everybody knows. Nobody cares. Chapter 52 is set in 2018, so we're getting closer and closer to the present. There's a bunch of emails about the girls being sad that Casey's not coming for Caroline and Trey's wedding, and that they hope that she'll come out next year for Taylor's wedding, which is when she does come out. Chapter 53, the coroner said that the blunt force trauma wound happened post-mortem after he went over the falls, which we all know isn't true, but that's what she's saying in the coroner's report. She said that after reviewing the findings, there's no further need for investigation and that it was an accident. Chapter 54, we learn more about what happened when Devin was in town. Casey sent him away after a couple of days. She still didn't introduce him to anybody and sent him to New York. I don't know if she's gonna go back to New York to be with Devin. And then she visited her parents' graves, and on the way back she ran into Paula Foxberry, Trey's mom, and she told her off a little bit. Which was kind of awesome. So told her that everybody knew what horrible people they were, and that they protected Roy when Roy killed her mom and stuff, and it was funny. Chapter 55 is about Caroline, and she's in the truck with Bo. They're going to Rosemary's house, and we get confirmation that it was Bo who gave her the money for pastry school 15 years ago. He got some kind of money when his grandpa died, so he gave it to her because she needed it more than he did. That was so sweet. Chapter 56 is Rosemary's chapter, and they're all in swimsuits and they're gonna go float on rafts and stuff, and she basically just tells her friends how much she loves them in this chapter because Rosemary's the one with cancer, so she just wants to make sure everybody knows that she loves them. Chapter 57 is Ada's chapter, and they're on the lake floating in the rafts, and Ada's just remembering back to when they did that in high school. This chapter is literally only a page long, and she's just thinking about how they'll be friends forever. Alright, and the epilogue is in Casey's point of view. Casey broke up with Devin. He went back to New York. Casey stayed in Goldie, started dating Silas eventually. She waited a little bit to mourn her breakup. Bo went back to Nevada to finish out his work that he had to do, and then he was going to come back to Goldie when Caroline was ready to have the baby. Seems like they're all happy, and Nosy Nancy comes over and brings them tea and stuff sometimes. I hope you enjoyed my reactions as I was reading Goodbye Earl. If you are interested in my spoiler-free review, click the link to the video on the screen.